I could get a stock like RIM for maybe, that might cost me 15, 20 million, Annie, to knock RIM down. But it would be fabulous because it would beleaguer all the moron longs who are also keying on research and motion. It is a very quick way to make money and very satisfying. No one else in the world would ever admit that, but I don't care.
This is what institutions and mega multimillionaires think about every trader, about you and about me. They consider us idiots. You and I are just worthless ants these people step on. But what if I tell you there's a way for you to beat these whales in the industry? And in the next 20 minutes, I'll tell you how you can stop enriching these people with all your sweat and effort. And I'll also tell you how and why they control the market however and whenever they want. And let me tell you something that will be key to understanding how to beat these giants on the industry through a simple and quick history. David was a young shepherd under 2 meters tall, and Goliath was a giant nearly 3 meters tall. With just one stone and without landing a single punch, David knocked him down and defeated a man with the strength of 20. But how is this possible? He have a special stone? Was David superhuman? Allow me to give you the answer. It was just a simple stone. What gave David the victory was he knew how to throw the stone. Let me repeat it. How he threw the stone is what gave him the victory. With a sling, a stone, and the knowledge of how to use it, he achieved an impossible victory. So now you might say, why do I need to learn how to throw stones to win in the market? No, you don't. What do you need, and I will help you with, is to never again be an easy prey. I will help you to get the knowledge on how trading whales manipulate the markets. You will be David with a stone, taking down the giant and dominating the markets by understanding what the traps of these sharks are and how to avoid them. And before we move on, I ask you to subscribe and leave a like if you're finding this interesting. Let's get straight. Let's start with the real basics. Why do they manipulate the market? We must understand why they need to do it to know their favorite hunting grounds, because it is important to be clear about this. Large institutions are hunters, searching for easy prey to feed on. In this case, your liquidity. And it's important to understand this. Your trades are their liquidity, and that's why they need it. Even if it seems surprising and even how people like Mr. Kramer appear to enjoy it, as we mentioned earlier, they don't do it because they want to destroy your money, although he seems to enjoy that part specifically. They do it because otherwise it is impossible for the market to move. Many of them are driven by greed. Others know exactly how and in what direction they will push the chart and to where. But to do that, they need liquidity to move the market. And let me tell you something. They do not always prioritize their greed. What does this mean? The market is full of traps. Everywhere you look, you'll see some clearly controlled and manipulated by them to wipe out your liquidity, your orders. But for a huge amount of time, the market is safe to trade because they have already taken what they need. And what do they need? Liquidity. They need a constant counterparty to take their orders, meaning if they sell, they need buyers. If they buy, they need sellers. They don't make money when your stop loss get hit. They gain liquidity that they must convert into orders. They gather tons of people willing to sell or buy the moment they trigger those stop loss, which become liquidity for their orders, not because those people wanted to buy or sell, but because they were forced. Now, listen closely to what they achieve by doing this. Institutions hunt people hiding in levels that look extremely safe, because every take profit from your trades or from others becomes an obstacle that prevents institutions from moving. So they attack the place where everyone hides, because they already know you're there. That way, they remove everything blocking their movement. But once they remove the obstacles, they stop focusing on that zone for a while. To understand this concept, remember, institutions are like conscious, hungry bears. The take profit of traders are traps and bait for other animals. The viewers will see where the trap lead and will see traders hiding waiting for something to fall into it. The viewer triggers the trap, and while the traders rush to see what got caught, the viewer hunt them while they're unprepared. And indeed, there is a moment when they have finished with all the hunters who set their traps. Or in simple terms, they wipe out all the liquidity and resistance when they know there is no resistance left. And I repeat, literally, the market is safe to trade because they have already taken what they needed. And yes, once the viewers are satisfied, they leave and the path becomes clear again. But why does a retail take profit that slow down institutions? And how do they leave a clearer path? Because many trades, small funds or banks, try to trade against the direction to the big players want to move. They get in the way, slowing the advance because every take profit is an opposing order. So by hitting a stop loss, they remove interest from that area, clear take profits like obstacles, and force traders to side with the movement or simply leave the path empty, allowing huge moves with minimal effort. Now, understanding exactly how they behave and what they're looking for, I'll show you more clearly which are the examples, what they do, and how they do it, because now it's your turn to read their movements and avoid them. There is something important to understand. We cannot beat them all the time, nor avoid every hit. That's impossible. However, when I talk about beating them, I mean finally ensuring they don't eat you alive, that they don't wipe your account and make you lose all your trades. I'm talking about achieving a real edge that lets you live off the markets. And that is more than possible. It's guaranteed if you understand these principles. Let's go to the simple part and I'll show you clear examples of how institutions manipulate. Before showing you, this market behavior exists in all markets, all pairs, all time frames, in all sessions, and it's repeatable over and over. In some places, in form is less frequently, but the pattern is always the same. I'll show you how it works in different scenarios. With that context, I'll break down this chart and this manipulation theory. Let me introduce the first example and explain what we should focus on. I trade price action with volume. My way of reading price action, also known as ICT concepts or smart money, is kind of different. My goal is not to trade OVs or FEGs, it's to understand where they are positioned in the market and what role each zone plays. This is an M5 chart of GBP USD, my main asset, data from July 27, 2025. I want to focus precisely on this zone, and then I'll explain how the same effect unfolded afterward and how the volume clearly shows us that orders were executed here, meaning obstacles were removed. The viewer is already satisfied and will leave. So let's talk about the context. If we go up a time frame, we can see this is just a brief pullback in a bearish move. So it will form a high before continuing down. In M5, we can see it manipulated twice with a space between. So I'll focus on when the manipulation happens immediately or shortly after the first high. Here at this level, it might look like the high was already formed and price will fall, but 3 hours later it wasn't so. Price breaks the level, takes retail liquidity and decides that this zone will now be respected because the move after taking liquidity was enough. They push price effortlessly and never retested above. They just continued down. Price was indeed safe after removing the liquidity. This manipulation took place during Asia Open, while the previous level was set at New York close. Important context, because the high was created during low liquidity hours and Asia liquidity injection devored it. Now, a question arises. How do I know liquidity was truly taken? Easy. The volume. Volume is the oldest and most reliable indicator in my opinion. It was used in the stock markets in the 19th century, long before RSI, MACD, or moving average exist. How does it prove its value here? Even though this is the high, retail liquidity was taken here because volume is higher here. Higher volume means more transactions. And why so many? Because stop loss were hunted and absorbed by institutions. After that, they hunted those who thought price would go bullish. And I know this because volumes confirms it. And how do we know that now liquidity is fully executed? That the bear is satisfied? By following liquidity behavior. Institutions induce a direction pushing price. When they remove all resistance, there is no one opposing. A box is easier to push when there is nothing blocking it. When they do that, price moves with ease. Little effort and volume reflects it clearly. A push with less volume shows no resistance. When volume later increases again, it's because resistance has returned. And this is the market cycle. They remove competition, let price fall, and when resistance appears, they smother it and continue moving price. Now, I want to show you a similar example, but during New York session, GBP/USD again on M5. From this zone, we see how price behaved during Asia, creating a range, a zone you want to avoid for almost any trade. But it's interesting how the pattern repeat. A high form at 3:20 a.m. New York time, and after a prolonged intentional move to make traders believe price was going down at exactly 8 a.m. New York time, they break that previous high with force, executing all orders there and wiping out all resistance. But even after the break, price keep going up slightly because there were so many orders the institutions couldn't absorb all that flow. The red candles after 8 a.m., if seen on M15, look like simple dojis. On M1, they look like a small accumulation, nothing significant. That's institution, smart money loading orders before finally taking the retail liquidity at the 9 a.m. New York high, and then falling to continue the trend. Again, price didn't break the previous major high, just hunted liquidity in the zone where resistance and counterparties existed before dropping with little resistance. This happens often in small time frames from H1, H4 upward. It's really less common, or manipulations become invisible at that scale. Now that all this is clear and I'm sure you understand this concept, the questions becomes, how can I trade with this? I'll explain how, but first, you need to know this. You can add this system and knowledge to your trading. You don't need to change everything or trade only this. I'm showing you clearly how institutions behave and one of many ways to read the volume so you can adapt it and make it a new filter. Maybe the missing piece of your edge. Now, for the first example, the main idea is to know your environment. While trading live, you don't see everything, you only reach the conclusions. So we need information. Right now, we know it's a bearish move. Price paused to make a small pullback, and we know it made a high and manipulated after. Obviously, before Asia Open, you don't trade. That's throwing your capital into the trash. We consider Asia Open. We have a Novi and other load zone respected twice. Institutions are still selling at that maximum price. We know the liquidity graph happened below the high and that there's a strong volume after the graph, meaning liquidity wasn't fully taken. All this helps us avoid being trapped by smart money. After the move, comparing volume of M1, we see much less volume even on strong impulses, proving the prior move was a trap. Continuing with the second example, again, we observe the structure forming. If a structure looks noisy, check in H1 or H4. In H1, we clearly see a bearish move forming a high, previous example, and a central accumulation, a valid OV, a price where they want to renegotiate operations, meaning sell if their objective isn't to reverse yet. And there's something obvious here. Even though they took liquidity, the market still has liquidity. We see that in volume. New York has naturally higher volume, but after a direct absorption, there must be less counter liquidity for price to move. Yet, we still see bullish candles. So probably retail is fighting. in price likely won't fall yet. And finally, price breaks the previous high and then drops. So there's two very important things here. Number one, the green candle touching the high has the same or slightly less volume as the candle that breaks it, yet one has full body and the other is mostly weak. This means same order flow produce less movement, meaning far more interest in selling than buying, or institutions absorb our buys. This divergence between price and volume is crucial. When there is high volume but very little movement, it's either lack of interest in that direction or absorption. And number two, immediately after breaking, the bearish move is initially low, and that alone is a signal of weakness. In M1, we see no resistance once that level is reached. Liquidity is gone. When resistance appears again later, institutions accumulate, manipulate, and continue to drop. And before finishing, at the end of this video, I'll recommend content that can help you even more. In this video, we saw that by using the knowledge I share, you can understand why they manipulate price and how they do it, and avoid institutional traps so you never get caught off guard again. If you like what I taught you here are most interesting videos where I explain in detail how to use even more tools and teach you more about trading. I hope you see you the next time.